Welcome to this episode of What's Happening Waupaca. I am Joni Kern. Today we are talking to Mayor Brian Smith, who I haven't seen you in about a year since last year's budget talks. How are you?
Great. Yeah, thanks, Joni, for inviting me to be on.
You bet. It's good to see you again. We're going to talk a little bit about the budget because that's coming up, and I think that that's a concern for everyone. And then we're going to talk about some other projects that are going on in the city. So let's start with the budgetary process. You said that you're still pretty early in the process for getting the numbers together, right?
Yeah, since we've hired our new finance director, we've kind of gone in a different direction, and this is the third budget that she has helped us prepare. So we started with capital requests, which are capital improvement type things that are once every 10 years, once every 5 years, once every 20-year type things that we have to look at financing. And that was our first step. Our next step is to talk about personnel, not only personnel requests, but also this is where we talk about raises, whether any of the departments need additional staffing or reduced staffing. And that will be our next step. And then the third phase, of course, is to try and put all that together within our budget. And we actually have three funds. We have the general fund, and then we have our water, well, actually four. We have the general fund, which is the tax dollars that we have to collect for to help pay for that. And then we have the water and the sewer funds that we are in charge of. And then we also have, of course, Waupaca Online, which is also basically an enterprise fund too. So all of those budgets have to be ready and over to the courthouse so that they can print the property tax statements normally by about December 1st.
Okay, so you still have a couple of months to put it together. But it takes a lot of cooperation between all of the departments because you only have X amount of money to work with. And I know that one of your priorities is always to keep the taxes as low as possible for the constituents.
Yeah, I mean, our goal has always been to try and find other ways to fund or to receive revenues so that the burden doesn't go on the property tax. And we've been fairly successful in doing that. It does tighten our opportunities to, let's say, for example, give a 3% raise. We're not going to be able to do those kinds of things. We might not be able to do some of the projects that we think are important to us, but quite honestly, in our personal budgets, those things you have to do those same kinds of things. So.
Well, exactly, and I can't imagine that a city budget or a state or federal budget should be run a whole lot differently from the home budget. You have X amount of money, and then in my house, you pay all of the bills, and then you have to have all of your necessities like food and whatever. And then with the extra money, you prioritize what is needed most.
Exactly. And we've done in the last 15 to 20 years, what the city council has done is tried to make it an opportunity for businesses to come to town and make it so that there is space available for them. And hopefully then, of course, they'll start paying taxes and that will help us to increase it. But the other thing that we've done too, and we're seeing this all over the place, is that businesses are looking for employees. You just can't find enough employees to fill all of your positions that you have. And we have opportunities there for people to move to our community, not only in our apartments, not only buying houses, but we have a lot of vacant lots that we'd like to market to people so that we can get them into town. It will not only help our tax roll, but it will also help us with our larger businesses in town and even our smaller businesses to be able to fill those positions that are unfilled right now.
Right. So are you finding that you're reaching out to other communities and maybe even other states to bring people here for those jobs?
Yeah, it's I'm sure we're not the only community that's doing that. you know, and that's a tough process. We're a small community, but we're not so small that we're not looking for growth. You know, we're seeing lots and lots more growth in the Valley area, the Appleton, Appleton, Menasha, and then we're also seeing it to our north in Stevens Point and Wausau areas. You know, we just want to get some of that here in Waupaca, and
sure.
so we're out marketing, and we're hoping that people can like what we like, because, you know, I mean, we know how great it is to live in the community, and we just want to make sure that other people understand that too.
Sure. So I want to touch on something else, because I know it's a question that I've heard from people, and I want you to explain it to us so we understand. When you are trying to bring a business into town, you sometimes are able to give them TIF dollars, which helps them which is tax increment financing, which helps them with things like property taxes or funding or whatever it is that they need to get going. How does that become bottom line tax dollars for the city?
So when we talk about TIF districts, and we have a number of TIF districts within our community, and what happens is that you designate an area as a TIF district, and all the tax dollars that it was accumulating before the TIF district started continue to go to all the taxing authorities, the city, the county, the school district, the state, and also the local technical school, which is Fox Valley Tech. But any improvements that are made in the TIF districts, which normally the city would pay for that or the developer will pay for that, those will add taxes to these businesses.
Right.
And those tax dollars are used to pay off that debt that we incurred in trying to make those improvements within the districts. But not only do we make improvements like roads, sewer, and water, level roads, a purchased property, but we also incentivize packages to get businesses to come to our community. And we don't do it exactly the way, and nobody does it the way they used to, where they actually gave them money to be able to help build their buildings. Now what we do is almost in reverse. You do this, and then we'll pay you in the future. So we'll pay you each year for 15 years. So we don't have to borrow more money anymore. What we do is we use the tax dollars that they pay us to incentivize their package.
Gotcha. So then the presumption and the hope is that not only over time, but even while they're there, because they have employees and they have their tax dollars and they have whatever else they're doing to help grow. Because if you bring employees to town, they're purchasing in town, they're living in town. So all of those tax dollars are actually what adds to the bottom line until the TIF is done. Do I have that right?
You do. And I wish it would, you know, we have land and we've had some TIFs that have suffered and struggled, especially through the housing and the business recession that we had in 2007, 2008, and quite honestly, it took smaller communities like ours a lot longer to come out of this, and I'm not sure that we're completely out of it yet.
That's what I was going to say. That was a long, slow process, and there are a lot of communities that are still feeling some of that.
Oh, there is. We are trying to do everything we can to make sure that people know that we're open for business and that we welcome them and we want to work with them. The city council has made it a directive to our city staff that, hey, if it makes sense to the business, we want to hear it and we want to see if it really does make sense for the city also.
Sure, cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on to that, because you said there are some special projects coming up that you want to talk about.
Yeah, we have actually it's going to happen in either 2021 or 2022, but we have a Main Street project. If anybody that's driven down our Main Street knows that the road needs to be repaired, but not only the roads, but the water and the sewer pipes that are below that. Some of them are over 100 years old and need to be replaced. And yeah, we've replaced them a little bit here and there with repairs, but we actually need to dig down and put in some new sewer and water. But at the same time, council chose to look at what we could do to help our community, and so they put together a committee that of area businesses, consultants, staff people, city council members that can discuss what they envision for the downtown area. And they have some neat visions for that. Now, some of them are, you know, as we always talk, maybe a little bit of a Christmas list, but there's some neat ideas there that we should be able to incorporate to help the downtown area to make it a little bit more vibrant. And of course, we all know that even though downtowns are not as important as they were for trade and for businesses and so on, people still look at your community by what your main street looks like.
And Waupaca is huge with that, because Waupaca is so big into tourism that if you walk downtown during the summertime, I mean, it is just, there are times it's just throngs of people going from store to store. So it's exciting, you know, and we've talked about this Main Street project several times on the show, and it's exciting, but it's also worrisome because the amount of time it's going to take to rebuild Main Street, businesses look at it and say, how much am I going to lose? Am I going to be able to survive? Because I'm not going to be as easy to get to.
Yeah, and you know, hopefully we've learned from what's happened to other communities, and the one thing that we did do is we brought in advisors that have worked on other Main Street projects and were able to keep one side of the road open, so you still have traffic going down Main Street, and it doesn't affect the timeline. We've been able to do it they've been able to do it at different times of the year, you know, where it doesn't affect the economy, the tourism as much.
Sure.
So, like I said, hopefully we can learn from those experiences that we've had in the past.
So you're looking at this being complete or starting in 2021?
I think we're talking start date.
Okay.
Really. We received a grant that is going to help pay for a majority of what's going to happen as far as above ground. Below ground, of course, that will be our utilities that will have to pay for that. But above ground, we've received a grant, and we're not expecting to see that grant until, I think, 2021.
Gotcha. So that's the timeline, because I know that's been moved back a little bit. But you know what? When you're talking about a project that big, it's just to be expected that the timeline is going to probably get pushed out a little bit just to get everything, because you have to have everything perfectly organized in order to pull something like that off.
Yeah, and maybe it will help us. You know, maybe, I mean, I think quite honestly, you know, if we would have tried to do it next year in 2018, we maybe would not have been able to tie up all the loose ends. And I think we'll be able to do that.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. So what other projects do you have going on that you want to talk about?
Well, you know, not that I want to steal the thunder from our economic development director or anything like that, but I think it's important to know, you know, that we do have businesses in the downtown area that are willing to invest. We've talked to a couple that is going to open up a kind of an art store, glass making a store, and they want to do something that's new to our community. They want to live in the back half of the building and work in the front half. And we've been working through that process, and that's going to come to a fruition, I think, actually tonight at tonight's meeting, and we'll see how receptive the city council is to that. The Danes home, which has been at the end of our Main Street for forever, it seems like. I remember my grandmother telling me of dances that they used to go to when she was a child. And we've got people that have bought that and are going to start remodeling that, and I think that will just bring more people to the north end of downtown. You know, the west side of town, you know, with the additions of like Quick Trip recently, with Subway rebuilding out that way, I think that's shown that the west side of town is still our strongest side of town for retail, and we look forward to getting more businesses in that area also.
Perfect. Sounds good. Well, thank you, Mayor. It's
Yeah,
always
absolutely.
good to have you on here. Maybe it won't be a whole year next time.
Maybe not.
That would be nice.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Thank you for joining us for this episode of What's Happening in Waupaca. We'll see you next time.